So, welcome back to Spear Factor, everybody. Today's special guest is Miss Nicole Burko. She is a member of the Women's USA Spearfishing team and a multi-world record holder for spearfishing. And we're going to talk about those, especially that gigantic snapper. Um, that was incredible. So, I definitely want to talk to you about that. Too many times people think women's world record, and I can honestly, I'm guilty of this sometimes too, where it's like, oh, it must be a medium sized fish because there's just not that many women that spearfish. But I will say, and as bad as that sounds, I know it sounds bad, but um, it's not a reflection on the quality of women that spearfish. It's just your your snapper, your pargo, your dogtooth is freaking massive. So well done, but we're not going to talk about that yet. We'll get into that. Um, yeah, and the bar keeps getting raised, and higher. Having said that, and it's really cool to see women. Just pretty soon, we're going to have to do one category because everyone's crushing it. So it's really cool. Um, so Nicole, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, where you grew up, and how you kind of get into all this.
So oddly enough, I'm originally from a small town outside of Toronto, Canada. But I moved to the United States when I was 12. I've been living in Florida for most of my life at this point. And Florida is where I fell in love with spearfishing. Um, I started I started out just snorkeling. I was always loved the ocean. Um, it was something that was actually forbidden to me as a child. It was like, oh, don't go in the ocean. There's sharks. There's jaws. And, uh, and now I'm around sharks perpetually and acting with them in a fairly aggressive, way where I'm trying to get back to the boat before they can steal my fish. Um, I did my undergraduate. I'm an artist, and I studied art at in Miami originally, and then I went and moved to New York to go to graduate school at Columbia University, which was uh, both an amazing experience, but for my art, and then also this really unique and interesting experience for my spearfishing because going out to Montauk after living and diving in Florida was just so different, as you can imagine. um, and then just I was a South Florida free, I've been a South Florida freediver for the longest, with a brief hiatus while I was in graduate school, and people there really took me under their wing. I've been so fortunate to have dove with people like Valentine Thomas, Lawrence Arasura, uh, GR Tar. My team for Freshwater Worlds is Brett Label and Matt Suter. I mean, my boyfriend, Jason Wetmore, also an amazing diver. Um, really so lucky to have learned from all these people.
So when you went to Miami for school, did you specifically choose Miami for like for the location, like compared to anywhere else, or was it why did you target that college?
So I was already living in South Florida. I don't know if this is a well-known fact, but Florida is like the dream for all Canadians who want to come to Florida. At least my family, the dream was, to come to Florida, and because it's where we vacation typically. And my grandmother was American, so that was we were able to. My parents immigrated, and then I was able to as well. So that's why. Sorry for the rambling, but that's why they chose Florida, not me. But I'm so happy that they chose Florida. In retrospect, I don't know what I'd be doing in Canada. I probably wouldn't be spearfishing. I'd probably be skiing or something. But
Did you ski much when you lived in Canada? Was that like
um,
a
I
passion of yours?
I actually, it was another thing that was forbidden because I got hurt skiing and I wasn't allowed to do it. And, you know, I was supposed to be this fragile female thing. And ever since I can remember, I didn't want dolls or any girl toys. I wanted, like, why can't I have like the cool racetrack and like the BMX bike? Come on, get it together. So,
So that's the second thing that you said you were not, it was forbidden to do,
yeah.
spearfish or just go in the water in general and skiing.
This is kind of embarrassing, but I kept it a secret for the longest time. The first time I ever went in the water was surfing. And then my mother found out. And then eventually it was, oh, well, don't, whatever you do, don't like, uh, don't do anything more dangerous than surfing. And then, of course, I picked the most dangerous thing possible. So luckily she doesn't know. I don't have to kill. But I mean, saying it now, I mean, it sounds ridiculous and absurd, but I mean, I just was always, kind of a daredevil. And I think, I was always loved these really exhilarating things. And, I think it's a parent's natural response to be like, hey, that's really dangerous. Maybe you should not do that.
I think so. My mom I mean, she still to this day worries if I post something and there's a shark or something, she like calls me, be careful when you're, whatever it is. But then now that I'm a parent, um, when we go offshore, sometimes I'll take my son or my youngest wants to really get into it. She's kind of like my wild child, but I worry more about them than I ever did about myself. If something happens to me, who cares? But like just putting them on kelp patties, it's like, let me get in and check, make sure there's not, a mako or something, or I don't know. It's funny. As a parent, it will expose every insecurity or fear that you have. And somehow it's like God put it in them so you know that's what your fear is, and they're just going to press that button. It's
Yeah.
pretty awesome. It's a good opportunity for growth. Um, as a human, as a parent, I guess, as a man and a woman. So you're in Florida. What was your transition like from getting in the water, just diving to meeting the crew that you're in? Like, how did you jump from, introduction into diving or even being exposed to it in the first place to now where you're at?
Well, originally, I suppose I was an elite snorkeler. I was going out. There's some really good shore diving spots in Florida. I got my dive flag, and I assembled a little crew, and we just kind of started going out. And then I saw some spearfishers out there, and I was like, whoa, 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 what's this? Hold on a second. There's something better than what I'm doing. Um, so eventually ended up finding the South Florida Freedivers, which is a really amazing dive club, very nurturing. So many people just, willing to help you learn how to spearfish and learn how to dive. And I mean, this, when I learned also, that was a godsend because they didn't have all these intro classes to spearfishing, to free diving like they do now. So you really kind of had to beg and plead for somebody more experienced to take you under their wing.
That's a really good point. What you just brought up. But did you how long have you been diving for?
I guess probably like 17 years diving, 15 years spearfishing.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I can completely relate to that. In your club, that's I've heard of the South Florida Freedivers. To be honest with you, I'm not super familiar with a lot of the club stuff, but is it seems like the more and more people I talk to, it seems like it's a pretty big club in Florida. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a really big club, and I've actually, since I met them, I kind of have gone around and like, traveled and like attended some other dive club meetings. And there's some cool clubs, but it's kind of unique. It's quite large, and there's, you know, it's huge, and there's a big energy. I guess it's like, because it's a big city. It's Miami, and a lot of places, and also there's like, it's like a big ocean, Bimini's right there. Some places you go, like California, like nobody wants to take you to their spot, or I mean, you really got to be in with people before they'll take you to their spot. It's much more tight knit, or it's like cold water, and like everybody's really cool, but there's just not a lot of people because it's cold water. So for whatever reason, this has been always just been my favorite dive club.
It's interesting you get that vibe all the way in Florida. So I take it you've been out here before diving, or like about California just in general. Like,
Yeah, I have, and I've met some. I mean, I've met some really amazing people. I mean, it's great out there. Don't get me wrong. It's cold. It's cold. It's murky. There's it's and there's and I'll get into this later, but there's a skill set. Like I totally ate it, kayaking. Like my first time going out, I went out. I did a tournament with the Fathom Ears at the and yeah, I had no clue what I was doing, but just like, well, I'm gonna learn trial by fire and just go out there and give it my best shot. And um, it's cold, murky, and very different. And I love that challenge of learning how to dive new and unique terrain. And it also really humbled me because it made me realize, even if you're the top dog wherever you are or in a certain facet of diving, that you could still really suck uh, at something else in another location. So
yes, I 100% agree with you. It's really cool to be humbled and then kind of like start over and really get a chance to learn all over again and really increase your knowledge base through traveling and trying different spots. Um, yeah, that's cool. I just asked you because I'm like, I kind of agree with you. It's pretty tight lipped and tight as far as like people that want to take you out and all of that. It takes a little bit of time where you got to really know someone and wait to get invited. And I think a lot of that here is because there's just so many people in such a small place where it kind of just is a natural like competition of resources. So everyone's like, hey, is this guy
yeah.
cool or is this girl cool? Um, in such a small space. Um, well, moving on. So now you started diving. You got in the Florida Freedivers, the South Florida Freedivers. What was what was your initial thought when you started diving? Like, what was your initial like? Was it easy? Was it like um, was there some boundaries that you had to overcome as far as equalization or just comfort being comfortable?
I, uh, for the diving portion, when I originally started and I was just snorkeling, and doing all that, I got like the Umberto Pelissari's like book of free diving, and I was like, and just trying to read it, trying to figure out how to do all this stuff. I apparently can hands-free equalize. I have really good eustachian tubes. I've never had an issue with any of that kind of stuff, very fortunately. Um, and then I ended up taking PFI. I'm certified for intermediate PFI, so did that. And uh, sorry, I got off topic. Well,
No, that's okay. I'm super jealous of the people like that. They're like come out and they're like, oh, like this hands free equalization. And in the meantime, the rest of us are smashing our guns or something against our face, trying to clear, going down
well,
with a
I mean,
light in one hand or whatever.
and that's like maybe like if I get so if I'm like several days into a multi-day trip, if you cause that trauma and you don't take like an ibuprofen, or, you don't drink enough water and you become inflamed, then I'll have to, use my hand. But I'm very lucky to have good eustachian tubes. And I've seen so many people suffer and have a real problem with that. So,
Yeah. So fast forward to you're on the USA women's spearfishing team. How did you go from club diver to being a part of that? Because that, to me, that's pretty huge. And I don't honestly know a whole lot about that portion of things. So I'm genuinely curious, like how that whole selection or how that whole thing works.
originally started doing tournaments with the South Florida Freedivers. Over the years, more and more tournaments, getting better and better. My I met my boyfriend at nationals in 2015, and then later on we met again at another spearfishing tournament, and then we started dating and everything. And so he's a commercial dives sometimes. He did it during college, and it just became a part of his life. And from doing that, sometimes I really became a good diver. That's what really took it for me, I think, over the edge into like becoming um, where I can compete on a high level. And then as far as how you place to be to be on the women's team, there's two nationals, and then there's like a ranking for women for each national. So at the one in Stewart, I placed second. And then at the one that was in Lake Powell, I, by one fish, placed second. But it's like they instituted like a new. I did really well on the carp day because I'm really good at volume fishing from commercial stuff. But they did it where each day was equal percentage wise, and I did really bad on the. Only got 3 stripers compared to the other woman who got 7. And then on day 2, I got what was it? I scored 70 points and she got 41. So or 70 fish and she got 41, but because of the percentage system. But I did I did good. I placed 5th amongst the men on the second day, so I was pretty happy with
That's a
that.
lot of fish.
It was good. And then I'm really excited because that was my first freshwater. Um, so sorry, to answer your question, you have to go to compete at 2 nationals, and you have to rank. And if you're top 3, then you're on the team for sure. And then the 4th person's an alternate. Um, and then yeah, that's how you do it.
That's very cool. So it's a freshwater tournament and a saltwater tournament.
Well,
Is that
so I'm doing 2 tournaments. Sorry, I should have specified that earlier. So with Matt Suter and Brett Label, I'm going to be doing in May. I will be competing um, at the Freshwater Worlds, which I qualified for at the previous nationals. And then, so there and it's in the same lake. So I'm very excited. So having lost by 1 fish, I'm like, okay, I have learned so much more. There's so many specific little things to freshwater fishing, and I really feel like it leans to my strengths as far as like, volume, being like really in tune with your gun, like, not missing a beat, just like bam, 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 bam. And so I feel like I'm really excited to see if like I can really place higher with the men, or see what I'm capable of. So I'm really excited about that one. And then the competition that's upcoming that's more intimidating to me is because there's a lot more unknown. Is we're going to be competing in Laredo, Spain, which is like going to be like surf. dirty water, possibly like not super clean, not super dirty. Um, and it's going to be, skittish fish, shooting in holes, flashlight, shooting in surf. Something that a California diver actually would be probably quite good at. So,
I was gonna say, well, like from my experience, I'm like, then you just slow down. You just got to really slow down, especially around the surf zone, and almost drift, let the current move you. Because if you're going, well, you know how it is when you go in no viz. If you're moving, by the time you see the fish, you close the distance, and that thing's gone before you even get ready to shoot. Having dove a lot in my profession and low viz, everything just slows down. Um, but I've heard a lot of European guys, Italy, Spain, as far as the hole hunting, do a lot of hole hunting, with flashlights and just mainly shooting fish in holes with really short, stubby guns and
mhm.
different kinds of floppers, more like trident kind of tips and stuff like that. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with them using trident tips. It's definitely a lot of stubby guns, but also longer guns. It really depends on what you're targeting from what I've seen. So the first phase of tournament going to this to do a tournament is like the research phase. So, you're looking at like videos from these locations. You're reaching out to anyone that that's dove in this location. Um, but, I've seen like kind of a lot of the Euro stuff where you have, these, these rail guns. It's a lot of like laying in wait. It's a lot of like smooth movements, and it's a lot of like flashlights and holes, unless you're doing the surf stuff. So, um,
What have you noticed about the surf stuff? Like tips on that, or
I actually
experienced it?
haven't seen too many videos of the hunting and the surf, but it seems to be like really just like some. It seems to me, this is like my take. I don't know if you've ever done like almost like shadow hunting where you like go and you're like really murky and you just like you get like a second to like shoot something. It seems like they get like some like you know like you see it for you got to like react quick and just shoot off the cuff is what I saw, but I could be totally I'm kind of talking out loud while this is all, you know, we found out the location a little while ago. We've just gotten the fish list. We don't go there till we go towards the end of August. The competition's in September. Um, so you know, I know how to plan for a tournament, but the more international, the more different it is. You know, uh, it's more exciting, but it's also um, it's you have to like reach out to your tribe and kind of get as much information as you can from everybody.
Right. That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, it's like just start pinging on everybody. I mean, I know like a lot. There's quite a few places that I dive off season, and it's all silhouette. Or places that I do dive where there's a lot of river runoff or whatever it is, and you have to know your fish so well that the silhouette, you know what kind of fish it is. Um, and yeah, I keep the gun back and literally a lot of shooting from like not even fully extended. So real light guns, quick. But I'm also like literally picturing in my mind like a piece of kelp or something that would be floating and just moving, if any at all, in the surf zone, in the shallow zone, just being like debris floating so that nothing gets spooked, so that you could see it without um, running basically into it and scaring each other off.
I love this. I
Um,
need to definitely reach out to California, California
yeah, I
people.
mean, there's a ton of guys that are probably more experienced with that stuff for sure. I just know, I mean, I was diving in low vis 5 days a week for a job for over a decade, so I have a little experience with that stuff. But yeah, hit up. I mean, there's tons of people out there that know 10 times more than I do, um, and it's supporting the U.S. spearfishing team. Why wouldn't you share?
I mean, I'm happy to get anybody's input on you know, I feel like I feel like you learn something from everybody you dive with, even if it's just the way they have like a better snorkel or like whatever. There's so many little gear things, or I feel like uh, everybody has something to share. Some more, and then sometimes you get a plethora of knowledge, and you're like, oh my god, this is amazing. But yeah.
Yeah, there's like times where it's almost like pull up a chair, you're in a full on master class with some of these guys that, especially like you said before, when you travel somewhere and you go to somewhere new and you have a mentor or a friend that's like, okay, this is the deal. And yeah, it's very humbling, you know, um,
And
like traveling to,
I don't know how much traveling you've done, but like it's crazy too. You'll see the exact same species of fish, and you'll see that they behave completely differently. Completely differently. And you're just like, what is this? Like you'll go to one like so in California, you go and hunt tuna, and you kind of got to do this breathe up, and then you guys leave the engines running. Like I was like shook. You guys leave the engines running, and you like just dive off the back of the boat with the engine running. And I have gone to Costa Rica where they'll like cut it, and that doesn't bother them, so they'll like cut the engines off, and that's like your cue to like hold your breath and just like immediately dive down because they'll go ahead of the porpoise. um but I guess over there they look for little sounder things. And anyway, sorry.
yeah, we do that too. No, I think, okay, so I mean, we got to have a whole
Sorry.
meeting on this thing. No, you're good.
Maybe we could talk after the
Um,
after the
no, uh, you know, a lot of times too, you turn the engine off on a boat, especially if you have momentum. We used to call them hot infills, and you're just like hauling ass to a spot and then go neutral and turn the engines off. For us, it was different kind of diving. We were doing it for different reasons, but you jump in, that prop is still cooking because right, it's basically in neutral, it's free spin, and now we're moving out, so it could still get you turning. I kind of talk about this in the class that I have online, turning the motor turning the engine or the
diver.
wheel to the right, right, kicks the ass end of the boat away from the divers. So if you're going to drop in a diver and you go to drop off, if you go straight, most likely you just continue to go straight. But if you turn it to the right, it puts the dangerous end away from the diver and it carries you away from them, and you basically go back down wind or swell or current. And then when you go to pick them up, you can go up current to pick them up. But you want to have momentum carrying you through that. Now, with the tuna thing, you're sounding like you're saying, they're sounding some of the boats that shift. When you shift, there's a acoustic spike that happens when you go from being in gear to neutral. That spike, and I know about this from mines that are set off acoustically from my other job, which we it's another topic, but um, that spike is what will spook tuna a lot of times. So I've kind of noticed that diesels tend to be, the frequency of a diesel engine is less likely to spook a
I've heard
uh,
this.
yeah,
I've
less
heard
likely
this
to
is why
spook a
like if
tuna.
you have like a diesel center console, like everybody's trying to buy it.
Oh, really? I didn't notice that, but this is what I've just kind of found. And then the other thing is too, recently, just talking with another local fisherman here, he's like the slapping of the hull, the waves slapping the hull when you're hauling ass, that can spook tuna. But so I think those two things, what I've noticed, I had a day on a boat with a diesel and there was fish all over us. I had a friend, I called him in. He's on twin outboards, and he's like, I can't even get on these fish at all. And I'm like, I don't understand. Just jump in the water. Like they're right there. And they weren't even coming near him. And the only really difference was either he was shifting or we were just sitting there neutral with the engines running. Either he was shifting or it was just that frequency between the two engines. Um, and I know that bluefin are very, very smart and sensitive to that. But yeah, it's wild, and it's because it's like you said, every fish, I mean, even from reef to reef half the time, every fish responds. There's general rules to them, but they respond differently depending on where you are in the world. And then the other thing is really interesting too is that the size of the fish. Some places like you can go and the average size of like let's say a parrotfish, is like 12 inches. But then you go other places in the world, in Mexico, and it's like that thing is a dinosaur and they're everywhere.
Think like take like mangrove snapper for example. Like I had no idea until I traveled that you can find one like the size of your fin, and you're like, wait, if you like, so you think it's a cubera at first, and then you look at the teeth, and you're like, oh my god, this is a mangrove snapper. So no, totally.
Yeah, and then it takes like a second for your brain to like adjust. Like you have to calibrate your mind on what is acceptable to shoot what we're shooting now. Because there's a spot here that I dive down and everything is like medium to large compared to small to medium. And you drop down and you could pull the trigger on every fish on every drop, but it's like, okay, slow down. Let's target like certain species or certain size limits. Um, well, since we're talking about traveling and big fish, so how many times have you been to Costa Rica? Just once?
No, I've been three. I've been three, and it hasn't been as good as that first trip I did. I feel like they have like a charter running out of there, where I went, and I feel like it's gotten really popular, and you can don't get me wrong, it's still a great charter, and it's still a great trip, and there are still 50 pounders out there. I don't know that there are still like they're a bounty of 30 pounders and 40 pounders, but you feel really lucky when you get a 50 pounder now. Um, but I guess I got really lucky with the timing of that trip, the planning for that trip. I got some good intel on that it was popping off over there. Uh, and and then there was great weather. And then the one thing that really worked to my advantage is that I'm a fairly good dirty water hunter. And we brought our own marker buoy. And the charter that we went with was like, oh no, you don't want to dive here. It's too dirty. And we were like, no, that's all right. And we're like, and put our marker buoy in, and we were ready to go. Um, I think that cubera are much easier to hunt in either dirty water or in a cave. I think that if you're going to try and hunt a cubera snapper out in the open, you're going to have to have like, you're going to have to, I don't know, you're going to have like some ninja level breath hold or be supernatural, because they're very smart and you're not going to get close to them. So I was we had actually I was told that, oh, they're probably not going to be here, the big ones aren't going to be here on the spot. So we were kind of fed up from a day of having lines getting tangled. There were four of us on the boat. We had some friends from Australia with us, and I took like a 120 reel gun. In retrospect, I think that's why I landed the fish, because everybody was getting caught in these caves that were beneath us. And I was like, I saw this giant fish, and I said to myself, if I do not stone this fish or really get the best shot into it as possible, I am probably going to lose my gun, and I'm probably going to wreck the trip for myself. So, like, unless I get this really good shot, I'm not going to take the shot. Um, so I aimed where I thought that the cubera was. I like slowly pull out my gun and I aim at where I think that the cubera is heading to. And I get this, bam, I get this really great shot in the head. And I'm wrestling this fish up. Like I'm kicking as hard as I possibly can. I am super excited. I get to the surface. I'm still pulling. And I noticed, but then I noticed like, ooh, like the fish is coming a lot easier. What I didn't realize was that the spear had like, it had fought so hard that it had like worked the spear like almost like through its head. Um, I see that like my spear is about to come out, and I take my knife and I use this technique where you stab it in order to get one more place to hold the fish. Um, and then I got my hand in the gills. I finished it off, and I just kicked back to the boat, and that's all there was to it. So
So you said you stab it. Are you talking about just for leverage, just stabbing the fish?
yeah, so like I don't know if you've ever noticed that like if you go and you try it, well, so for one, like you can't grabbing a giant fish like that, you know, when you get in with a spear can be dangerous, especially if it has a lot of kick. So one technique that my boyfriend taught me is like you try and like, so if this was like, I guess viewers wouldn't be able to see, but you kind of stab it in the front of the head. You make it like swim into it almost. Not necessarily the head, but you try and get like some like holding point, like where you really like get it in there, and you just have like another point to like hold it by while you're messing with like another holding point. So it's not like, you know, if it's, you have the skin hanging and you're like on by like a tendril, now you have this other point where you can like direct the fish. It works really well with amberjack, especially because a knife goes in really well. With a cubera, it's harder because their heads are a lot harder. Um, but that's where I learned that was from doing AJs. And you know, you don't necessarily want to like grab it by the spear because then you might bend your spear because they have a lot of kick. So that's I don't know. I don't know if people
That's
use
a
that,
great tip.
but I love that technique.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a great tip.
so
Well, especially too, because if you grab the spear, you're giving them leverage to rip out any more too, like you said.
you're giving them leverage to rip out, and then on like sometimes you'll, I mean, you have the potential of bending a spear. Um, it depends how like you grab it, but more I do use that technique when I'm scared that they're going to rip out. Um, and then you know, try and get your hands in the gills, and then it's all it's all easy from there.
So how deep of water were you guys diving in when you guys were dealing with the caves? Were they losing the fish in the caves? Is that
They
what the
were
big
losing the
guns?
fish to the caves. They were shooting the, and so I think it's embarrassing, but I think like 3 fish were lost to the caves, not by me, but by other divers that day. And and I eventually lost one to the cave, which is kind of embarrassing, uh, but not the big one.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was 65 foot where I shot mine. The caves were probably in like 75, 80. So you really had to like work to make sure that it didn't go down that little bit of extra depth.
Right. It just go off the shelf and then into the cave. Is that what it was? Like a drop off?
You know, not 100% sure, because the terrain was like like it was murky, like I said, and the terrain was like kind of changing. But it's some points it was. I think the drop off was close to us, but it was more like there was just there was like higher points where the fish were on top of the higher points, and then there were just like cave structures underneath. Is
Okay.
what I saw.
So I'm legitimately curious. So you guys were dropping down and on this structure, and like a lot of times were the fish coming up looking at you and then taking off, or were they just before you even get within range, or how did that work? You didn't have very good viz, I guess. So
So we didn't have very good viz. What I initially saw was a school of smaller snappers. So like imagine like nice fin size like mangroves, like you know size like like fish, and they were like it was a good cluster of them. And then you know I'm kind of tucking. I'm hoping as I descend deeper, I'm going to see something good, and then I see this like behemoth of a fish, and I'm like trying not even to look at it. And I'm trying not even to like, I'm not trying to kick. I'm just trying to like position myself ever so slowly to stretch out and to where I think that this fish is going to swim to.
So then when you hit the bottom,
No, I
right?
don't hit the
I,
bottom. I don't go to the bottom.
okay, so you're just dropping
I'm
down.
dropping down slowly. And when I pulled the trigger, I was in 65 foot.
Okay, and he kind of gave you a
He
shot
was
when you were dropping.
so, but when I pulled the trigger, he was like in front, like he was not below me. He was like in front of me. He had like kind of tracked. I came from above, and then he was like tracking over. And by the time I actually pulled the trigger, he was almost in front of me. He came quite close.
Nice.
Very lucky.
And then the other guys were they doing more because they had bigger guns, I'm assuming. Were they doing
Um,
like more or less technical shots, I guess, or why were they able to lose in the cave?
well, no, they
I
got
mean, you
some really
stone
good ones. So, like,
yours.
let me be clear. Like, they got some amazing. I mean, there were, you know, some good 55, 60s that were caught that day. Um, but yeah, some were lost. I think just because trying to take that distance shot, not realizing what was below us. The cave structures. So it was like that trial and error of, thinking ordinarily you'd be able to recover that fish, but because there was that hole and because of how powerful they were, you know, it wasn't. It was unanticipated.
Yeah, I think at some point everybody's going to get there or be there, having had that where it's like, whoa, okay, and then you find out once you like pump the brakes a little bit, it's like, oh, we got to revamp this. Were you using cable or Dyneema, or just straight mono, or
I use 400-pound mono, and like a good like reel line, like a thick something equivalent to uh, a 400-pound mono. I don't know, like it's the same thickness, but in reel line. Um, and I usually like to use double floppers. That's something that I got from commercial fishing, where you don't give, like slip tips, for instance, are great for certain things, and single floppers are great for certain things, but for holding on to a fish and really doing some damage, a thicker shaft and double flopper is the way to go.
so that's a couple times you've mentioned commercial fishing and things you've learned from your boyfriend too. So you're talking about commercial spearfishing, like in Florida, where the guys are diving and they're free shafting, as my understanding.
So he does both. He doesn't free shaft. I guess he does the scuba stuff. He used to do the scuba stuff. He actually stopped because he got bent. But there, for certain species of fish, like AJ's, red snapper, cuda, spadefish, and a few others, you free dive and it's more efficient. So you'll see if you follow Steel Rocket, who's another commercial spearfisher that I really respect. He'll do both, depending on what makes
Okay.
more sense.
What are some things that you like? What are some tips that you took from it that allowed you to put 70 fish in the boat during the
Oh
freshwater
man,
tournament?
I was like so excited when I realized that carp are very similar to red snapper. So, um, uh, and then also, I had Brett Label as my teammate, who's like so knowledgeable. So it was like this plethora of knowledge. But from commercial spearfishing, I mean, just like you get to like where you can like you love your gun and you can like load it so fast, and you just it just becomes certain things become automatic where you don't think about them the way where at one point you thought about driving and all of the little things associated with driving, and then you don't have to think about them anymore and they become automatic. um, Certain things like the gun, for instance. I remember when I first started, I was like, oh god, how do I, and you got to watch everything and you're like, oh man, it's kinked or like whatever. Just having a really streamlined setup too. Like I don't have, uh, I there's like, I don't know the name of the knot. There's like a knot that I tie that goes like directly to my clip that's, and I make sure my clip is like loose. You just make sure that everything functions really well. And then you have redundant systems too. So if anything breaks, I know what's could possibly break. Like I know the things that can sort of break. I have like shafts like pre like rigged and set up, and I have them in like plastic bags so that it's like really easy to like quickly get another one, where it's not like some situation where I gotta like whip out crimps and like a whole bunch or whatever. I guess just having things ready and being so, and knowing that another big takeaway from commercial fishing is like the window of opportunity can be really narrow, and you really just got to be ready and have all your gear organized and laid out and just stuff ready for when shit hits the fan, because it's gonna come. And then like having that, and then, oh my god, my something broke, boom, I got another gun. It's already ready. It's already ready. I already, it's ready to go. All I have to do is have my like, my person on the boat throw me my stuff, and like my float line is ready. It's laid out in a way where it's not going to tangle. My gun is like ready to go, all I have to do is like load my gun now, and I can get this done in 30 seconds. Like that kind of stuff is, it's so exhilarating. I love it. Like I love the calm, like, ooh, I'm gonna lay down on the bottom diving or whatever. But for me, just like getting into that zone of like the adrenaline is my favorite.
And when you say like the shit hits the fan, are you talking about just the number of,
The
well, I guess a
fish,
couple
the
reasons. Like
sharks, everything.
another topic of having a good buddy, but your dive buddy is also like your dive partner in and out of the water. Like your go-to guy that you call and you go, or girl that you call and you go on trips, and like, I know exactly what this person's doing. We have our little, we're all on the same page, just prepping the whole thing. And I think that whole process, I absolutely love it. Just the planning, the whole thing. Really cool. With your, I'm assuming, is your main dive buddy your boyfriend?
So up until, and this has been a little bit of a difficult transition, but up until he got bent, so now he has difficulty freediving. So he's taking a break from that. But luckily I have my South Florida freediver crew and stuff like that. But so I'm not able to do the commercial stuff really, like I was, uh, but it's good in a way, because then you start to, as much as I love all of that style of diving, as for Spain and other tournaments, I really need to learn, some of these other techniques and methods of hunting.
Yeah, it makes sense. Just learning from other people. Um, so we talked about and how big was that snapper? 70 pounds?
69 pounds, 69, almost, not quite. So it was so exciting. I couldn't believe, I mean, and to be frank with you, at that point, this is a while ago that I got that snapper. And, it was like everything coalesced. I think the Nicole Burko of, today, it would, you know, I would have more confidence in my ability to catch a fish like that. But at that time, it really floored me with, the way that the visibility was. Like, and I think at the time I didn't realize, because I went back to the same charter, how much more skittish the fish are when the visibility is good. And, how, and then later on catching nice cuberas like in the Bahamas or Miami, for that location. And I really, either you got to get them when you first see them, like you're coming around a corner or something, or you have to get them in a cave. have never, and I would love to meet somebody who like tracked down a cubera for like, like out in the open, because I don't think that it's possible, but I mean, maybe for one of these legends.
Yeah, I definitely don't have a lot of experience with it. I mean, um, but I'm assuming somebody will have on the show will. So yeah, I'll have to ask that question. Um, what was the other? How long ago was that?
Oh God, I'd have to look, but I mean, I would think it was like at least, I think it was 5 years ago, five or
Okay,
five 5 years ago.
not that
Something
long
like
ago. Yeah,
Yeah, not too long
very
ago.
cool. I mean, yeah, I saw that picture. I was like, wow, that's a giant fish. And I wanted to get to the story about my I yeah, the more and more you hear about these fish, it's like with a fish so big and powerful, I mean, stoning them because they will literally rip themselves in half. Any species, if it's big enough and powerful, will literally rip itself in half. Stoning it just seems like if you really want to land it, other than having a fish story about how you lost all your shit, it's stoning. It's the way to go.
Oh, for sure. I mean, unless you're in like, blue water and like, you're going for tuna and like you can just like wait until it exhausts itself. I mean, anywhere where there's reef, you're asking for trouble. You don't
Yeah,
take a good
yeah.
shot.
Reef and sharks. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I guess that's another really good point. I guess you can't even. What would you do if you were in a location? I guess you'd have to like be in the water, like constantly defending your fish, like dive, get it shallow, and then like constantly like dive down to poke off sharks if you had to.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the summary of like if you can get dogtooth off of the reef. I mean, granted, they're not blue water, but once you keep them off the reef, then you got to deal with that aspect of the sharks. But even here with makos, you shoot a big bluefin, you let the floats do the fighting and all of that. Or you know, I mean, there's makos that show up and will take a chunk out of that fish, or white sharks. Yeah, but we don't have the numbers, the big population, right? It's usually like one shark you got to worry about. They're usually just big and nasty, but we don't really get the quite like the reef sharks that go into a feeding frenzy and decimate
Oh,
a fish in
man,
seconds.
I've got. I didn't realize like how I've got so many. I'm just you get so used to them here in Florida because they're just a part of like it's not you just can't every day, every day, and it's like sometimes now it's you know 4 or 5 coming up the first shot you make, even if you stone it. It's wild. It's wild.
Are they
But
mainly are they bull sharks or what are the main species you
mainly
deal with?
bull sharks, and which is very lucky. It's bull sharks and silkies, and what I've learned is that if you take as long as you get the fish in quickly, they tend to be hesitant to come in like and so fast. Like we're in the Bahamas, those little reef sharks will just in an instant come up. And then I've also learned that if you're really loud and aggressive, that really works well for them. So I have all these videos on my Instagram and I'm about to post actually a bunch more because people have really enjoyed them. But it's me, and I get made fun of a little bit. It's kind of my signature move. I like bark or like yell at the sharks. And you can like literally see though in the video, it's like he's coming, he's going in, he's gonna take my fish, and then I yell, and he's like, "Oh, I don't want to mess with her," you know. So,
Well, you laugh, but I know a bunch of people that do that. Well, exactly what you explained as far as like stating your claim over your kill. I I think a lot of experienced people, depending on the sharks, they will back way off. And also as soon as you subdue that fish to stop triggering that response in those sharks going crazy when they're twitching around and all of that. But I've said it so many times. I mean, a shark is a predator, a predatory territorial animal. I mean, if you necessarily are a bigger, nastier predator, they're going to back off. I mean, it is what it is. And they don't really know what the hell to think about this weird thing in this environment. And if you're not scared, then you're obviously not prey. You're probably predator. I'm going to stay away. But there are some sharks that, like you said, every reef is different too.
And so this is my experience with silkies and bulls. But I would hate for somebody to take my advice and go bark at like a great white. I think that would be really dumb. But I don't really know because I haven't. Truth be told, I've never encountered a great white. I I'm hope I do one day, and I hope it's not the last thing I do. But but yeah, I think all sharks are different, and the sharks currently that I'm most scared of are those little reef sharks.
Yeah, I do agree. I mean, you could see how it could just trigger and then just turn into a feeding frenzy on you is what the energy, you could feel it just because they get so wound up. And there's so many of them.
Hmm.
Yeah. How about tiger sharks? There's quite a few tiger sharks down there where you dive too.
Yeah, I see hammerheads more often. The hammerheads seem to react well towards that same kind of attitude and tactic, um, as do the tigers. I feel like the larger the shark is, the less the less they kind of care about me barking at them. But I feel like up to a good like 8 foot shark, I'm fine. Like they will respond well to it. Once you start getting into these real monstrous sharks, I don't know if it's just my mojo and they can sense that they can feel the bluff more. um, but I feel like it's probably my behavior. Actually, I probably like back. I face them. I never turn my back, but I definitely am more apt to like get out of there than to hold my ground. So I wonder.
So what do you think about, because I talked to several Florida divers and, dealing with sharks, there's just an abundance of sharks. Um, and there seems to be a mixed feeling of they should start catching sharks again, or other people are like, no, you should never kill sharks. But then some people are like, they are overpopulated here. Um, what do you think about that? What's your experience,
Well,
your
I
thoughts?
I think it's a really complex issue, and I typically defer to the science on this, and I think that you know Florida, especially having traveled, has a very well managed and maintained fishery compared to anywhere else that I've seen. Currently, um, what they're saying is that certain species of residential sharks are in abundance, which is what we've clearly noticed. Now, just because those certain populations of sharks are in abundance doesn't mean that it should necessarily be a free for all for all species of sharks. But I do believe that sharks are fish and that they should follow the same regulations and you know conditions as any other fish. I don't think that they um, uh, need any special protections over a if a fish is scarce, it's protected, and I think if a shark is scarce, a shark should be protected. And if that shark is in wild abundance, I'm sure that scientists would say, "Hey, this is creating an imbalance." The way that a fish that another apex fish were creating an imbalance. But that said, while I'm knowledgeable on the subject, I'm not a scientist myself.
No, that's a fair answer. um, what is your next like big step for you? You're going to go to Worlds, right? And that's your goal as far as competitive spearfishing. Well, what is your goal as far as your own personal goal for spearfishing? I mean, you have two world records. The first was the snapper, and then the other one, which one was that? Was that the AP?
No, actually. So so this is a tournament lesson that I learned. So we were commercial fishing. We were offshore for several days. I didn't put any kind of thought to the way I packed the fish. It was like, I mean, it was in the ice sort of, but if you're planning on weighing a fish, there's a proper way to pack it to make sure it doesn't lose weight. Um, and I did not do that. So I was ever so slightly short of a world record on that AP. But that was, my fault. So,
So how do you pack fish so it
well,
doesn't lose weight? For those that don't know, including myself, because I've never really. I guess I've never.
Well, you definitely don't want to have it in a situation where it's like on top of the ice. You want it to be like in the icy water. Um, and so typically, you wouldn't want your fish can become waterlogged if it gets saturated with water. So you typically wouldn't want to have your fish sloshing around in fresh water, right?
Right.
However, if you have a world record fish, then you don't want to like ruin the fillet, but you also don't want it to be in a situation where it's going to be like completely dry up high in the ice where there is absolutely no water. So
So kind of happy medium.
happy medium. You also want to like make sure the fish is positioned in a way where it's not going to lose its lunch. Because if it throws up, you can't put it back in. It's like that's.
Right.
And believe it or not, on these giant fish, if the fish throws up, that could be it. And I hate to initially, I didn't really do all of that stuff, but when you're competing at a world level, you have to be doing what your competitors are doing, or you might cost the U.S. a place at the podium.
Yeah, I understand. I think it's two different things, right? Fishing for food versus when you're talking about just primarily weighing in a fish. That's you said. I mean, a big fish throwing up is
And I mean, so like in at the world stage, they know this, so like you can't even do that. They have like special bags. No one can be on my boat except for no one can be in the water with me. I have to dive on my own. And there's like I have my own driver. We share knowledge as a team, but I essentially you're kind of uh, on your own. I mean, even throughout scouting, you'll have your own scouting people, but it's really, it's like it's like this rabbit hole, and I kind of don't even understand how I got into it, but it's
do you
it's
have a buddy to dive
oh
with?
when you're doing the actual competition,
Right.
you're not allowed to. No,
So
and
you're solo
you're
diving.
solo diving. Um, yeah, so it's dangerous. Obviously, most obviously, anytime you don't have a buddy, you're putting your life at risk. Um, but this tournament is new to women, but has been around for a very long time for men, and these are rules based on the fact that they voted it in because they believed that there was some degree of cheating historically if there was a buddy in the water. So that's those are the rules as of now. But
So this is
they,
the individual tournament, though, right? This isn't Team USA
yeah.
tournament.
Oh no,
Okay.
sorry. This is the USA tournament.
Oh, okay.
The
Well,
world.
I was just. Oh,
No,
wow.
yeah. So this is for worlds. You're not allowed a buddy in the water. Any USA tournament, you're allowed to have it's usually teams and buddies, and it's a very different dynamic. Um, it's a little spooky diving on your own. Uh, it's something I don't like to admit that I do, but commercial fishing, there's a lot of uh, your buddies in the water, but not necessarily a proper like PFI like next to you, like close enough where if like the shark is there, they can come back to you, but like not proper buddy diving. And I mean, I think those bad habits make me a good candidate for competing at Worlds, but they're dangerous habits to have, and I definitely don't recommend anybody pick those up.
I kind of feel like diving solo is like peeing in your wetsuit. Nobody likes to admit it, but everybody does it half the time. Like, or people that, I, and I don't mean this. I mean, everybody has like our own little like, and I don't ever recommend it too, but it's like their own justification for diving solo. Like, for example, just this weekend, I told my wife, I'm like, it's like 20 feet deep, babe. I'm just going to go, I'm hunting at the surface. It's snorkeling, you know? And she's like, nah, you're breaking your own rules, and it's like, and I mean, she's just being, caring about me, but everybody has that. But what it kind of blows me away is when people are doing 90-foot drops and say, like, bottom time, really stalking fish as hard as they can by themselves, to me is wild. But there's so much equipment now too with all these free dive recovery vests that are coming out that allow people to do that and with a higher degree of safety. Have they considered about implementing those things?
So
I mean, it's kind of
it's
new.
really silly, but like, so you can use the vest, but so here's the issue with the vest is that they're great. There is a risk of them detonating and like going off and like expanding when you know you're down and you didn't intend to detonate it, especially like with user error, because this would be something that would be new to us. The issue that we ran into is that if you're allowed to use them, but if your cylinder goes off, you're disqualified. So if your vest inflates throughout the day, you're disqualified. I'm hoping that like as technology improves, perhaps they can have cameras or something in the water, or like someone observing in the water with a camera that would like mitigate this feeling that they have where there's a possibility of cheating with a buddy in the water. But as of now, um, at the world level, that's not the way they do things.
It's also just sad that you have to do all of this because essentially people cheat, you know? I mean, that's the reason why. Like, people are fucking cheaters. It's pretty sad. I hate cheaters. But, um, I mean, because the end result is you want to make it as safe as possible. And in order to not make it as safe as possible, we have to cover it so that people can act like adults and not cheat. Um,
One
but
thing before we wrap it up is I wanted to talk about, just since we kind of bit into it, is biting off more than you can chew. And I've definitely had my ass bit a couple times, by you, like you said, you do the 20 feet and then you do a little bit more. um I've and I was just looking through videos that I have in my archive recently, and I remember this one instance where I got behind the currents ripping. I had been diving behind the boat by myself, and I'm shooting fish. It's a great day. Current's picking up a little more. My boyfriend throws a line out with like a buoy on the end, so like he can pull me in if like I get too far away. I shoot a really nice snapper, and I shit you not, 5 bull sharks shot up, and I am just like, I'm trying so hard to get back to the boat, and I'm trying to have my fish up, and then I look ridiculous because I like go and I pull it up, and then I'm like, okay, like I'm just gonna put the spear like I have the stick, and then I have the spear, and I'm trying to kick back, but with the current I couldn't, and I ended up just abandoning the fish and swimming back, and I felt so embarrassed that I let myself get in that position. But you know I think it's it sneaks up on you. You definitely have to keep things in check. And then the day that I caught my red snapper record on pole spear, and you're going to be so mad at me as a California diver. I literally just had a half wrap around my wrist. I always use like reels. I never use lines really. I I mean, unless I'm going to target something like a tuna or whatever. But I was using someone else's rig, and I just that half wrap, and the fish is taking me down, but I'm kicking back up. I'm like, oh, no problem. Boom, a shark goes right onto the fish, and now I'm being in this moment, I'm like, oh my god, gotta grab my knife, and I have my knife out, and I felt really good that I have like a pretty good setup. I have like a knife that's really secure. I have like a little lanyard. I put the lanyard around my wrist before I even grabbed the knife because I was like, there's no way I'm going to drop I'm going to drop this knife. Uh, but anyway, the shark ended up coming off of the fish ended up being bitten off of the shafts. Uh, but that's another time I've come really close to a bad situation. And both of them are on film. So, uh, uh, I guess it's a good, I haven't really shared it on my profile. I think I will, just because I think it's a good lesson for people to see like what not to do, and also how, if you're going for a tuna, you always think like check your, make sure you're not even a little bit entangled. But these aren't big fish, and you don't necessarily connect that like, oh, a shark is going to come and bite my fish and drag me down. But I wouldn't even shoot a mangrove snapper without checking now. So, but
No, it's hearing. I think the more you share stories like that, the more, like you said, sharing them and being open about it, because I think everybody here, like everybody here has done something stupid, including myself, where I immediately regretted it. And then also the other thing was, well, now I really put my friends in a bad situation. They got to deal with this shit now that I basically just started this war with this fish, and I was not prepared. But it kind of is the same thing that happened to you, is that when you're diving on reefs, you got smaller guns, whatever, you don't have the gear. And then some behemoth or something swims and something happens, and your mind's not there ready for that situation, and you see a big fish, you're like, yeah, I can stone it. And you don't, or a shark gets a hold of it and starts dragging you through the water. Um, but it's a very real, dangerous sport. And, I mean, not you fuck around and you find out, and some of us pay with our lives.
yeah,
Some of us pay with our lives, and then the others will learn from it. And I think, you know, as we mature in our spearfishing, because we've lived through those things, you're like, it's not worth it. Or for some of us, I'm like, I'm don't bring a knife to a gunfight.
well, one thing I wanted to point out, from my experience. So, like, having, like we talked earlier about redundant gear. One thing I like, almost as a PSA, I always like to tell everybody, is to have at least, you think you got this cool dive knife, whatever. Make sure one side of your dive knife is serrated, because let me tell you something: people don't sharpen their dive knives, and you need to maybe cut through something quite thick. And if you have a serrated knife, you can even cut through cable. If you really freaking have to, you can cut through cable. um I mean, I don't want to give you a guarantee, but I mean, I tested it out. I tried it. I mean, this is like thinner cable. You guys probably use something like super thick for your bluefin. But um I mean, I firmly believe that knives save lives. And I have a really good one. Full disclosure, I'm represented by Spear America, but they have this really great um, needle dive knife, and it's beautiful in titanium, and but it has like the serrated edge, and then it fits in really snugly. It doesn't like wobble around or do anything like that. So I really love how, I know that like, I feel like I've always had these dive knives that like fall out or, or get really rusty. And I don't know, I just really love this dive knife. And let me think what else safety gear wise. Um, I use fin keepers. I feel like fins can fall off really deep, and that can be a real safety issue as well.
You
And
were
I guess
saying you noticed it really deep, that they
well,
fall off.
I noticed well. So when your socks compress,
That's
um,
what I'm thinking. Yeah.
yeah, they can fall off, or just. But I'm thinking more of like surf. I mean, I guess it's not as anywhere near as big of a safety issue as a knife, but I really like having fin keepers. I guess they're not for everybody though, but um, and then I guess I don't know what your timeline is, but I definitely wanted to talk about a little bit about our fundraising for Worlds, and we're going to be putting on my club is going to be putting on a tournament um, to help me and the team get there. So um,
Absolutely. Go for it.
we don't necessarily have a date set yet. I highly recommend everybody to follow me at Spearfishing Nicole. It's my new Instagram, and I'm excited about it. I'm going to be posting videos about all of the things I've mentioned, so you can watch my peril as I get sunk down to the bottom by the shark, and all of my other blunders and successes. And then we should, in a few months, we should be having a fundraiser and raffle with the South Florida Freedivers. I believe for the Jack Kearns is the title of is the specific tournament that it's going to be. And then if you have suggestions, enthusiasm, knowledge about Spain, or any other time or effort you want to contribute, just shoot me a DM at Spearfishing Nicole.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Looking forward to the dog. I think I actually did. There you go. Speaking of dogs, right on cue. The dog barking at the shark. Um, yeah, I think I actually, did you have some videos of that up already? I thought I was
Which
looking
one?
at a couple of those. Yeah, of
Is it-
dog barking at the sharks.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's yeah, I have so many more though. Like I didn't realize that people were gonna like respond to that. I thought it was like kind of funny, and but people think it's hilarious. So if I'm entertaining, then I'll share it. I I don't know. I'm new to being somebody who shares. I am really kind of introverted, and I don't post too often, and I kind of withhold a lot. So I think I'm getting older, and I need to step out of my comfort zone. This is the first step. I'm doing a podcast.
Very, very good. And for the record, you stepped out of your comfort zone. You asked me if you could represent the team and be on the podcast and yourself. So
True.
that's that's pretty cool.
It's
um,
it's easier on Instagram. I'm just like, hey, hi, how are you?
yeah, yeah. I guess the alter. Go ahead.
I listened to my friend Jake Lawrence's podcast, and I was like, oh, this is really great. And, it had a really nice rhythm to it. And I was like, I feel like we could have a conversation and I wouldn't feel like anxious. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, Big Jake, he's a character. He's awesome. How
yeah.
do you know him? From
Uh,
diving?
we met at Nationals.
Okay.
Yeah, he's great. He was we all stayed in the same place, and he was cheering me on. So really great person and personality.
And that was at Lake Powell, right? For the
Correct.
freshwater? Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
going back.
Oh yeah. So Big Jake trains a lot. I've been noticing he's working out. For your, what is your, do you train specifically for the worlds or for the, yeah, the worlds? I think, what is your training regime? What does it look like to you?
Well, so for right now, like the most imminent thing that I'm training for is going to be Lake Powell, because that's in May, right? And then that training will kind of overlap with what I'm going to do for Spain. So more like I think for Powell, it's more important for me to have like a level of physical fitness. It's a little different. I need to have like a good, I need to be able to function anaerobically, like, well. So I need to be able to, I'm doing like hypoxic cardio, interval training, things that like, it's going to be high, like, it's heart pumping. It's very different from what most people think of with freediving and spearfishing, and very different from Spain in that I'm going to be nonstop, you know, for one example, let me give you an example. I was wearing a 7 mil the whole time I was scouting. Game day, 5. Like, and I was hot. Oh my God. It was just like carp. Okay. Like, just nonstop shooting, reloading, like get it up the line. You can't have your line tangled. Like, just like, shoot, re-rig, pull the bands, just, and, you have like a bruise, like at the end of the day, cause you've been pulling your band so much, and it's, but I love it. So, and they're invasive too for anybody listening. So it's not like we're like pillaging Lake Powell. We're doing good. So
Yeah. Do you just throw it on your shooting line? You just slide it down and then load your gun, or do you
I
throw it
don't,
in the
I don't,
boat?
I don't divulge which kind of system I use. No, I'm thinking, I'm not 100% sure I'm going to use what I used last time. We're actually going to be testing out a few variations. Not everybody has the same rig and the same setup at nationals, and so based on what I've seen other people using, I'm going to be testing out a few varieties out of zone before the tournament, and seeing which is the most efficient. So I'm not sure yet what I'll be doing.
Cool, cool. So you're doing more like cardio and breath hold kind of cardio workouts. Is that what you're saying? Like high intensity?
Yeah, like
Um,
a steer. So so either high intensity interval where like you're on the stairmaster for like a few minutes, like really intensely, and then you rest with a very small interval, um, or like I do I'll do like a brisk walk, and be like, and then like do intervals of like breath holding
uh-huh.
with the brisk walk, like kind of increasing it like tables almost. um but the main thing is just to gradually and not on like a one workout kind of thing, but gradually, like daily, give yourself either less rest of breathing in between these like cardio sets, or like just, yeah, just less breathing, more intensity, um and more time,
Tempo.
not yeah more time where your body can't recover oxygen, so that gradually your body gets used to just being strained, and is like, oh my God, what are you doing to me, and adapts.
That's the best kind. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
best kind. Just
um,
run you into the ground.
yeah, and then I'm doing a little bit of weight training as well, just so that there's like some special ones for like arms, and things that are really good for women to do. Though I don't subscribe to this whole notion that you need to be super strong to load a gun. I think it's all technique, and I learned how to rig up a gun really well from like someone who was older, and there's no need. You can have 3 bands instead of 2, have 4 bands instead of 3, have the skinnier bands. Not all band material is the same. Get like, some are much more springy and stretchy. Um, Adreno has a really good video, and it goes through all the different band material types, and you can learn about all the differences between them. Um, these are all, I don't know, it's like a one rambling stream of consciousness, but this is how like tournaments are. It's so many minute details and so many like, there's no one way to do it. There's temperature things. There's like, a lot of it is, looking for structure that they like, trying to, and then there's always this gamble. Like for instance, the first day of, now this isn't carp, but this was actually striper, but it's kind of similar. The scouting is similar. And though the striper are more nomadic, they move. And they uh like everybody and their mom showed up to my spot and like spooked it, and it was just like, god, we thought no one was going to be at our spot, and then like everybody rolled up to our spot, and it was just like we're screwed because and then you're going down the list. You're like, okay, so like, do I hunt this like with everybody here, or do I like try and go somewhere more remote? And then any decision you make is a gamble at that point. So, but uh, you know, the scouting phase is really somewhere where you want to have multiple eyes, and you want to have some local knowledge. So, for instance, in Italy, we found out a little too late to the game that like the clutch thing that everybody was going to need to get were these scorpion fish, which apparently are very residential and like don't leave. And everything else is pretty nomadic. So in retrospect, for Italy, we should have spent way more time scouting. But how do you get that knowledge? It's tough. It's really tough. You gotta have a local tell you. I mean, or find it on the internet or listen to a podcast.
Time in, I guess, too. Like just going there, going there, going there. But I think the local thing would be the best, easy way to streamline all of that.
For sure.
Yeah. Um, so we talked about the competitive side, but what are your goals for you as a spearfisher, um, in the just as a diver, just in the future? Do you have anything else you like kind of want to any trips or anything you want to kind of
Yeah,
pinpoint?
I have this duality to it. I'm a very split person, because I also have the art side. Like I make this art that's really related to the diving. Um, that's the diving is a muse for the art. Uh, I take GoPro footage of underwater caverns, and then I make experiential paintings based on my time in the water. So my paintings, I'm trying to get the euphoria, the anxiety, the tension, and the foreboding and awe inspiring qualities of underwater caverns, and just being underwater in general. And so I strive to hit the mark there. So I think moving forward with the diving and spearfishing, just having it, finding more links and parallels between the art and the diving. And then I think also, I delved into this competitive side of things, but I think, you know, getting a little more, going on some casual trips, um, you know, not taking things so seriously, just having some fun would be really nice too. It's it's crazy because you start down this path, and then it's like, if I just go to a tournament and I haven't like scouted it and done all this stuff, if I don't do well in the tournament, like I'm gonna get heckled for it, and that sucks. Sometimes I wish I could just find out that a tournament's going to be the next day and just show up, because I love that scene of like seeing all the familiar faces and people. And um, I hate that that's a thing. But I think, yeah, just cooking, going somewhere remote, not filming anything would be fun. Um,
Yeah, I can understand that. Your art, it's in. I was looking at some of your art, um, and it seems like you're really into taking, like you said, I mean, taking your experiences and putting on canvas. Um, have you found that your art has been um, like pretty well accepted or received from a lot of people? Is there certain?
Yeah, I mean, I'm about to be an exhibition at the Explorers Club in New York. I'm actually driving my artwork up there in a couple days, and I'm that was part of the reason that I, I, my art is a serious endeavor, and I, as much as I love spearfishing, and it's a passion, and it's something that fuels all of these fuels so much of my art and my life. I just I always felt like I can't make this post next to my artwork, So, uh, and sometimes you just want to make like a Jake Lord style post and be fun and funny and like, relax and not have stuff be so serious. But the art is kind of a serious endeavor. And then I'm also going to be in my first like major museum show, in June, which I'm really excited about at the Frost Museum in Miami. And I'll be showing with people that I've admired and idolized, since I was a kid. So, um, yeah, that's pretty
Very
exciting.
cool. Very cool. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you reaching out to me, and I'm really glad that uh, I was able to have this platform for you and the team. Um, and again, I just want to say thanks for reaching out, and you seem to be a wonderful example of women's spearfishing in the sport. And before we go, there's one question I meant to ask you. What are like what are a couple like what is one great thing you see about the spearfishing industry, and then one bad thing that you could see we could improve upon?
So, a great thing in the spearfishing industry and a bad thing. Um, I mean, I think, the spearfishing industry has like propelled, and social media have like propelled this like social network, I guess. I mean, I don't know, I guess they feed into each other. I think, uh, it's creating, innovations. Everybody is trying out new gear. I feel like gear is better now than it was, 10 years ago. And there's just constantly little tweaks that are happening, which are really wonderful. And it's allowed me to get like super, I've always been really difficult to sponsor because I really need to love. I mean, for the most part, let's be real. I mean, most people who are sponsored, you get free gear. And why would you want to use something that you don't love? Um, so I've always really loved polo sub suits, and then I love, shooting, a particular style of gun, and then I love, I have to have like a certain foot pocket because I don't know, I have like weird feet or something. So I have these great like Setma fins with like the Pathos foot pocket now, and I love that gear. And so finally, Spear America like had it all, and they're like, well, you can still use all the stuff that you love. And I'm just like, I mean, I'm terrible and I need to post like way more. I hope Petros will continue to put up with me, um but I love all these innovations that have happened to gear to make it so much better. Oh, and if anybody wants to support me and buy some gear, my code for 10% off is Kubera from SpearAmerica.com. And then what else was I going to say? What do I not like? Um, I think the same thing I don't like about the tournaments is that, I love all of the excitement. I hate all of the, it can become like this machine of like overwhelming, uh, it can be too serious in some ways. Like like anything good, too much of it, too much intensity can become a machine that kind of crushes.
Like the ego portion of it,
Yeah,
or just the whole competitiveness.
the ego, I think that you know I hate this feeling that like I have, that if I do bad in one tournament, like that's going to be like defining for certain people. Like it's a ridiculous notion in no other field. Like for instance, I sometimes make shitty paintings. Guess what? Nobody sees them. Like I put them away and like I show you all of the best paintings. You're going to have a bad day. Everybody's going to have a bad day sometimes. And maybe you're going to like have a sinus block. Like you shouldn't feel like you need to fucking, sorry, I don't mean to swear, that you need to hurt yourself.
Oh, you're
That
fine.
you need to hurt yourself on a day when it's just not happening for you. But, that's a consequence of, pursuing these endeavors.
No, it's good you're aware of it. But I agree with you 100%. Both on both things that you had said. Especially when you're so used to, we get set in our ways. We tweak our gear. Like I like my gear. I know I like this, and I like this, and I like this, and that's honestly for me. I thought Neptonics did a pretty good job of like spreading across the board. Like, yeah, all pretty good stuff. Really good stuff. Um, and I agree. I tweak all my own. I don't know. We all have different noses, different this, different that. So I'm right there with you with the feet thing. Um, but yeah, I agree with you. The I think the weird thing about spearfishing is like the competitive thing was fun for the of how you placed in the tournament. Um, I kind of was like, oh, that's funny because even if I suck, I'm still gonna go out tomorrow spearfishing. What the fuck do I care? Like, what? Why does that matter? The majority of them I have done, it's been a really. I feel like you put way more value in yourself. Like you think about it more than anybody else thinks about it. Maybe I think. At least I tell myself that. But I think you're spot on with all of that. That was really cool to hear that. It was refreshing to hear. Hey, somebody else thinks that too. Um, I think there's a lot of people that think the same way. You know. Um,
Oh, one last thing. Oh my god, they're gonna kill me if I forget. Uh, Follow my teammates are awesome. For the women who are going to Spain with me, follow them. It's the
I'll
US.
put a
Oh my god,
link
it's
to
like
it.
USA Women's Team. Women's spearfishing thing. Yeah, put a link to it. I'm sorry, but they're all really amazing, interesting people. We got lake divers, West Coast, East Coast, it's, well, of Florida. Sorry. We don't really have any West Coast divers, but we, it's a good mix, and you can cheer us on or not. But
Very cool. No, it's cool. I'm looking at it now. Yeah, women's USA spearfishing women's, and I'll put some tags in the notes for all of that too. And good luck to all you guys. We're rooting for you as we should be.
yeah, thank you so much for having me. All right, bye.